everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Oh, sorry, good afternoon, good evening, I should say in the right order. So, welcome to everyone watching all around the world. So, it's great for you all to tune in. Do we have a show for everyone today? As you guys know, usually we'll talk about games and all that, but we got a special episode for everyone. And with me here, my co host, John, all the way from the
Hello,
UK.
guys.
And I think the focus of this podcast is really about a very special topic, something that we haven't really discussed before in our time on the channel. And it has to do with this new scandal, you can say that has impacted one of our sons of Milan. Some of us, someone who's very dear to our team, and quite sad that we've actually lost him to, of course, for a big sum of money and helped to fund our recent Mercato. But yeah, I mean, John, what can you take us through how this, just to start things off, how this news actually broke and how it really hit everyone? And because for me personally, I had in no way expected any of this to happen, but it did. And you could say the story is really spiraling out of control and is causing damage not only to the players itself, but also to the league. And can you take us
All
through
right.
really about what happened?
Yeah, so I put together a little bit of a timeline because first of all, yes, I am Italian, but I've not lived in Italy for several years. And so some of the individuals involved were a little bit unknown to me. So the first thing to say is that the whole story revolves around a guy called Fabrizio Corona. Now, he is a paparazzo, as the word comes, and he used to in the early 2000s have a company that took photographs of celebrities, and what he used to do, he was involved in a scandal whereby these celebrities were caught in compromising situations, let's say, Husney. And what he would do, he would say to them, if you want me to uh, release these images or not release these images, then you can pay me an X amount. So the allegations against him were things like, extortion of money, and they're quite big names involved. It's pretty big celebrities involved actually. So in his own words, he in 2023 in his life he has served 10 years in prison. So he's by no
Definitely not the most
means.
popular guy.
No, no. So he knows his way around, and I've seen reports where he says, I'm like Robin Hood. Robin Hood used to take from the rich and give to the poor. I take from the rich and give it to myself. That's a quote that I've seen online from him. Um, so he is controversial. I think he's quite well known in Italy. He kind of sells himself as like the king of paparazzi, kind of thing, and he does like the limelight. So he apparently had some information regarding a betting scandal that was going on in Italy, and he actually first came out to the press and said in early August, on the 2nd of August, he said there is a player at Juventus that has a gambling addiction, and not a lot of attention was given to that story, and so it just kind of went away. Now, this was then followed up, and on the 10th of October is when the whole kind of big release came out. And what he basically said is that he had a source, and from what I understand, that source is someone related to a family member who's associated with an Inter Milan player. I do not know who that individual is. Um, but he said that Nicolo Fagiolo of Juventus is being investigated for using illegal gambling platforms. And Nicolo Fagiolo was the investigator in Turin, is carrying out this work, looked into him, and basically, initially, Nicolo Fagioli said, I deny betting on my own team. Now, where this is pretty serious is that the question I had as well was, why was this an illegal platform? And in what way was this an illegal platform? And what? it looks like is that this platform was one where you do not have to deposit your money to do the bet. You're basically borrowing credit from someone, and I think that's what made it somewhat suspicious. Now, when Nicola
John,
Fagiolo, yeah,
on that point, I'd just like to know, maybe in terms of, you might have some idea about why, because there's many ways to do it. Yeah, I mean, if they didn't have the money or they didn't want the source of the money to be traced back to them, these players they have like an entourage, usually like a group that follows them. Yeah, someone could by proxy place a bet on their behalf. So, why do you think they did? If it's true, why do you think they did it this way?
yeah, that's the thing that's really strange. Is uh, I can't quite figure this out because I read up on what Nicolo Fagiolo said, and he said basically it was like in a training camp for Italy under 21, and he saw Tonali on a tablet doing some betting on tennis, and he said, "What are you doing there?" And the way Fagiolo explains it is, when you're a footballer, you have a lot of free time, you get quite bored, and you just start to do stuff. It's like, okay, fair enough. You start to do stuff. So he asked Tonali, what is this thing you're doing? And Tonali apparently and allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly, said to him that this is a website where you're not traced because you're not having to put your own details in. Now, that being said, to me, as someone who has worked in the betting industry and someone who has multiple betting accounts, it sounds absolutely stupid. And as you said, Hasni, the allegation that Fabrizio Corona, having given you some background on the individual, are very, very strong. But I think everything he says has to be taken with a pinch of salt, right? So Fabrizio Corona says he alerted people on the 2nd of August that Fagiolo was doing this betting, right? He, in his opinion, Juventus knew about it, but decided not to report it to anybody. But in his opinion, it is the reason why Nicolo Fagiolo never did go to the US tour. That was completely unknown to me. But that's an allegation that this guy is putting forward. Of course, from Juventus' behalf, they say that they knew nothing about it. When they found out, they reported it to the authorities. So that's a different discussion there that's going on. The authorities will, I'm sure they'll get to the truth, Hasni.
It's not
Now,
like Juventus have uh, any less to deal with, right? I mean, they also
I
got a lot
mean,
on their plate.
isn't it just right? We're talking about corruption, a squad, a team, a club that's always mired in this stuff, and all the press is focusing on Tonali. Now, according to Fagiolo. I keep saying Fagioli because it's the Italian word for beans, right? Um, According to Fagiolo's testimony or accounts of stories, is that Tonali's the one that introduced him to it. Now that makes it pretty serious. Now, to begin with, the story around Tonali when it broke on the 10th of October was that he had not done any betting on football. It was supposed to have been poker, blackjack, and tennis. It's now come out that not only did he bet on football, but it looks like he's been betting on Milan games. He says there were Milan games where he was not playing. So that's another thing. But that is a very, very serious allegation if proven, because there's a code of conduct in Italy. I think it's called Article 24, and if you read it, I think the punishment is between 3 and 5 years, and it's more severe if you, first of all, if you gamble on your own team. Now, there's a third individual involved in the story because Fagiolo, he broke down and basically told everything to the authorities, and he said there's another individual involved, Nicolo Zaniolo. Now, that is the Roma midfielder that went over to Aston Villa. Now, Zaniolo,
John,
yeah,
just to stop you there. I mean, for those who might not be aware, uh, do you know of any cases whereby, I mean, to any normal individual, especially like wherever you're based. But I guess in a large part of the world, gambling is or online betting is acceptable. Yeah, but
Mm.
for players who are involved in the sport, what do you think is the biggest risk? And especially as you said, yeah, when you start to involve your own team, are we then talking about sporting results as well?
Now I'm trying to remember. There's a player in the UK that got done for betting like over 200 bets on football. I think it's Ivan Toney. Am I right in saying that Ivan Toney got caught?
Yeah,
And
I
I
think
think
it's a quite recent case. Yeah, but there've been
yeah,
others. Yeah,
quite recent case. I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? I mean, if you're going to bet on your own team, you're potentially going to do something. Like, for example, you can bet on things like a time of yellow card. You can do things like that. But I should say, Hasni, to your story, the accusation originally, the alleged accusation, I'm going to keep saying alleged, is that from Fabrizio Corona was that Zaniolo was betting on Roma results while sitting on the bench during a game. That was the accusation. Zaniolo insists to right now, to this day, that he did no football betting at all. In fact, it was all blackjack and um, poker. So whatever the truth is, it will be known because his tablet, Tonali's tablet, and their phones have been confiscated by the investigators, and so this will be known. But Corona's accusation is that it, who is Zaniolo's manager? It's his own mother, and so he's pointing the accusation also to his mother in terms of taking this forward and how the severity of it. Now, regarding Fagiolo, Nicolo Fagiolo, this is what he said. He started to run a massive debt by doing these bets, and it got to a point where by September he'd run something like €250,000. But there was a match against Juventus and Sassuolo where he was seen crying. And as this headline says in the Gazzetta, it's because he was thinking about the debt that he had run up, which was €3 million. In the story, in his testimony, he has said that he borrowed money from his friends, and we're talking about tens of thousands of euros from the looks of it. And he's now saying, I'm going to pay these guys back, but I'm not going to pay back these illegal betting sites. But he came to being very fearful about the potential outcome because he was threatened, according to his statement, to have his legs broken, which obviously
yeah.
would
Let's
be
let's be honest. He's
yeah
got to owe the money to someone, right? And why would someone set up an illegal or unlicensed betting site unless there's something fishy, to say the least, about them, right?
yeah. So the concern here, and kind of takes me to, okay, now he's come out and there's a prosecutor who's looking at it. He's admitted to borrowing money from Gatti and Draguzin as well, tens of thousands of euros to help him pay some of these things. The question that I had as well was, well, if this was an illegal betting website, how were you paying them back? And according to some of the statements that have come out, apparently he was buying, for example, luxury watches that were then being taken and being handed over as part payment. So it's it's really shady. It's all very, very shady. But the concern as a Milanista is that at the center of this it appears to be Tonali. Um, and the question is, how big is this actual situation in Italy? How many players are truly involved? Um, Now, the question on that, Fabrizio Corona said, so remember this, guys. We played against Malta, we played against England, and we were two players down, Zaniolo and Tonali. These were because of this investigation. Now, the question was put to Corona. Why have you leaked these names? Because you're having an impact in our national team's preparations for these matches. These players don't have clear minds because they're worried about if someone, an investigator, is going to come and knock on the door, which kind of worries me that there might be more to this in terms of the people involved, and there might be more. Um, yeah, Gio says that coward Chiesa, who's probably going to be available against us, but we'll talk about that later. Now, Corona said, okay, I will not interfere with the national team any longer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Rai 3 on Tuesday night after the Italy game, and I'm going to do an interview. And in that interview, I'm going to play the audio, which is a recording of Zaniolo having a conversation with some other players regarding this. That never happened.
I mean, he's trying to expose everyone else involved, right?
Yeah.
Or many other
So
names as well. Yeah.
we thought that on Tuesday night there was going to be a huge data dump and there's going to be a huge number of names released, but they never appeared. And he says that he was censored. So if you look at Fabrizio Corona's X page, he has said and has come out with said he's been censored, and so he's unable to speak about this. The question was put to him, however. Okay, you're saying you haven't come out with many new names. There's not much detail here, but how big is this truly? Tell us. Just give us an indication. Don't mention any names. Just give us an indication. And his statement, and again, guys, I want to say, take this with a pinch of salt. His statement was, it depends on whether the league wants to continue, because if all the names are released, up to 30% of the league could be involved, which would obviously mean a shutdown of the entire Italian, of the Italian Serie A. Now, that's something, again, I don't know if it's true. I don't know if it's false, because looking at the statements that this guy comes out with, he's a kind of a difficult person to pin down on what is true and what isn't true. And looking at his background, he isn't afraid to take his chances out there. Now, the last thing I wanted to kind of mention, now that we've spoken about all the characters in this particular story so far, is the ban, the length of the ban. Some people are reporting that Fagiolo got 7 months as a ban. Actually, the ban is 12 months because it's 7-month full ban from football. But then for following 5 months, he has to go to basically like
For being a snitch.
retraining, let's say retraining or education or counseling. That's probably the correct word, counseling. So it's a total of 12 months. And that is
Rehab.
massive.
I think they call it rehab, right?
Rehabilitation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's taken that because he's helping authorities, and he has said, and he has come out with all the names and provided all of the information. So that's apparently a deal that's been cut for him. Tonali is the next one along the line. Now, according to what has happened, it would appear that he could stand to take the biggest and most serious hit here. Now, the press is reporting in Italy 1 year. The likelihood is, they most likely, so from what I've been listening to Radio Rossonera and reading the Italian newspapers, and the indication is that it could be 1 year, full global ban from football, plus 6 months rehabilitation. So a year and a half. That is if he comes out and goes and helps the authorities with everything. He has admitted that he has a problem. He's going to go into counseling and rehabilitation. He has admitted to all of that. The question is, how hard do they want to throw the book at him? From how this story has been put, he's central to it. So we've sold a player, and this is a bigger discussion, isn't it? That's out there. Inter Milan fans want to make a point that this might have affected the previous season, and therefore the title should be given to them. That's one of the things that they want to make the story about. They just want to punish Milan. The other part that you can look at it, and it's conspiracy theories, honestly, is that he was sold to Newcastle with knowledge from the owners of what happened. Now, none of I don't have a clue about any of that. Those are all allegations, but surely timelines and phones and tablets will enable the investigators to get to a lot of the truth. It looks to me, however, like at very minimum, Tonali is looking at a year and a half out of football. On the Zaniolo front, that's the final of these three players. He is currently fully indicating that he did no football betting at all. It was all blackjack and poker. So potentially, if this is proven, he says all the evidence is on my tablet, so you can check. If that's proven, then potentially it's looking like he might have the most lenient of all, and he's an Aston Villa player now, so he might have the most lenient of all. Now I know the reason we're talking about this is involves Serie A. It's our league. It involves one of our sons that's moved over to Newcastle. Um, but this is a point about a bigger problem in the industry. I think Hasni, we should talk about a little bit. The gambling industry has come in. It's infiltrated football in every single nation, and it's become part of it. How many shirt sponsors, for example, are from betting companies? You're subliminally always being given these messages about, you know, and they say the way they get away with it, for example, is things like when the fun stops, stop. I don't know if you've ever seen an advert like that, but we get this all the time here in the UK. When the fun stops, stop betting. Um, but it preys on the addictive nature of gambling. Now, I understand. I think Fagiolo's point here. I do understand his point here. They're footballers. They've got a lot of spare time. They sit there twiddling their thumbs when they're not playing football and their downtime, and they often get addicted to things. It's well known in football that in the past to get into alcohol. There's a lot of alcohol abuse in the football industry historically. Some of the greatest footballers, were alcoholics, and then drug taking, and prostitution and things like that. And so, if it kind of you can see that spare time. I'm not giving it any excuse whatsoever. By the way, Hasni, I'm not. I'm just saying it is known that this is a sickness that is involved and it is attached. Now, to
Yeah,
to this sport.
I just want to add to that point. I think it's not something that's specific to football, but I think in any sport or industry where you have individuals who have come from, you could say, very humble beginnings, have been cast into the limelight, there's a lot of pressure on them. They've come into new wealth, if I can refer to that, if I can say that. So the temptation's always been high. And you're right, I think historically the sport has its fair share of, you could say, bad actors. And in this case, we look at if it's true what happened with Tonali, it's something that was a case that it influenced other individuals to do something that maybe Tonali thought it was a game, something he could have gotten away with, something on the side. But now looking at severity, I mean, we've all been young, we've all made mistakes. It's just that we don't have the consequences of such players because let's face it, they lead very different lives there in the spotlight. So yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of harm in the sport itself between the players. But of course, what matters to us is that not only just the individual, because yes, they can make the mistakes, they can do whatever, but how then it also affects the club. Like you said, if if it was even the case, and if it can be proven that there was some knowledge that we offloaded Tonali just for this case, that I think there will be repercussions on the club. But until that's proven, for me, is that I want to believe that it was something that I don't think Tonali wanted. If I'm not saying I know the guy, but I don't think any individual really want to put their future
Well,
in
you've
the
met him.
sport.
I haven't.
Very briefly, by the way. I don't think they want to put their career in the sport behind something like gambling. But yeah, I mean, the risks are there, and I'm sorry to say it had to happen to him. I mean, there's probably some other worse players like Caldara that if it happened to him, maybe he somewhat deserved it. He spent
But you see, You see, Hasni, the thing is, with professional sportsmen, there are sporting regulations. And as you said earlier, they do have advisors, they've got managers. These people should know what these guys are doing 24/7 because the repercussions are very, very serious. These individuals are seen as heroes by millions of people around the world. Not only that, but then they also represent their club, they represent their nation. It's a very serious position that they're in. They're getting paid very, very big money for it. So they do have to be held to higher standards. It's as simple as that. So if Tonali, if the allegations are true, let's say that, okay, and Tonali was the source of this, then he probably is going to be held as an example, and the prosecutor will follow suit. So we just gotta, on the other allegations about the timings, the sale, who might have known about it, those are all just hearsay at the moment. So we can't really discuss that with any weight or give it any credence at the moment. Let's just wait and see. But the situation, it's true. They used an illegal betting site. It looks like Fajolo was involved. He gave up the names of other individuals. There are other names, by the way, Husni, that are allegedly also involved, and one of them played for Italy last night, um, which is a bit of a worry as well because he had a really terrible game, and so I'm kind of
I mean,
wondering.
that's an indicator, right? If someone is all of a sudden like you seem a bit off, there must be something that's about him,
Well,
right?
so this is the other thing. The other thing, Hasni, is Spalletti came out to the press and said that Corona has really done something to disrupt the squad and the squad morale because they were so scared that investigators are going to knock on the door at any moment. And Corona has come out and quite strongly defended himself, saying, absolute crap. Your job is to do this. These are just things that investigators are looking into, and they have to look into. Um, it is not my fault. I didn't make these guys bet or gamble. Um, so don't hold me responsible for your performances. So that's where we are um, with the facts on this. And so um, let's see. The investigator's going to look into it. Um, I hope that Corona was massively exaggerating when he potentially indicated that 30% of the league is involved. Because he was not just saying the league, he was also, by the way, saying it goes all the way to the top, not just players, but also um, owners and so on. So, I hope the investigators unearth everything. We see what there is. I think in this particular case, these three players are definitely guilty of using this. Definitely, I should say, these three players are being investigated for this, and they've got all the information they need from their tablets. Um,
John,
yeah.
for those listening, and maybe those who like myself aren't familiar with the world of betting, especially in football, how does it work, and how lucrative can it get to really? I mean, you can't say that it's a harmless game because they're putting real big money into it, right? So,
Yeah.
can you explain a bit about how that world works and how it can really, sway some of these professional players? Because, like you mentioned, I wouldn't say they're earning like Messi level money or like Neymar level money, but it should be enough to pay the bills, just to put it lightly. So, what is it about betting that
So
attracts?
in 2023, the amount of bets that you can and the type of bets that you can place are absolutely unbelievable, Hasni. So during a game, you can bet pre-game, in-game, halftime, whatever. And you can bet for events such as I'm going to bet that there are less than 7 corners in this game. I'm going to bet that there's a yellow card in the next 5 minutes. I'm going to bet that there's going to be a shot on goal by, I don't know, Marcus Rashford during the game. Betting companies are now enabling people to place bets on almost every single event within a game. Okay, so I follow not only betting companies but also follow betting exchanges, and this is where you see the amount of money that is flowing in games. And we're talking about individual games. And I should say, by the way, it looks like when I look at all the different games from different leagues, the Premiership has the most money involved within it in terms of how many bets are being placed and how much money is being gambled. It looks like the Premiership is the golden goose, let's say. And there's a lot of betting company support, or I should say sponsorship for clubs in the UK. Now, why the platform so good in the UK? I can't really tell you. Football coverage is really excellent in the UK. You can't argue against it. Um, but I can use a betting website in the UK and follow a match anywhere in Europe by just placing a small deposit within that betting account. So it really is inducive of grabbing people's attention, getting them to place that first bet. So how big is the gambling industry, Hasni? I'm not saying billions of pounds. I'm going to say to you, billions, absolute billions. We're talking about here.
That's a legal amount, right? We haven't
Legal.
gone into the illegal or the
We're not even
unlicensed.
talking about illegal. We're talking about legal. And I will get, for example, I will get an offer to say, uh, put a bet on what's that? Okay, put a bet on a Giroud to get a shot on target in 90 minutes, and we will double your money. That's literally an offer that they will give you. And so people will just get in and say, oh, that's a really good offer. I think that will happen. And they put the first £5. And then slowly and surely, they start to grab you, and start to grab your attention. And the variation in bets that are available is astronomical. I can't think of many events in a football game that cannot be bet on. It's like two completely. It used to be all the bets were before the match. You bet on things happening. Now it's literally in match betting, and also you can withdraw bets and stop bets whilst the game is playing. So imagine I say to you, Husney, um, I'm going to bet on Milan to beat Juventus. Um, if Milan goes 2-0 up, the betting companies here in the UK, a lot of them will pay you the money straight away. It's just to entice people to get into it and become addicts. This is the way that these I don't know anybody that really doesn't do gambling of some kind or other. It's really become the norm, I should say. But the sad thing about it is they entice you with these really amazing deals, such as, you get in, register, put your name down. And this is the thing about legal and illegal, Hasni. The way you register usually is you need your address, you need the bank details, and so they know who you are. Yeah? And they can keep an eye on you. The illegal ones, from the looks of this, it's one where you don't have to put any of those details down, but somehow they know that you're a high net worth individual, and so they're willing to give you a huge amount of credit. And then they come back later and break your legs. That looks like the situation there. But betting is, and this is saying about cigarette, for example, advertising that used to be in Formula One. Those have been replaced with other things. If you remove the betting industry right now from football, we're talking about a loss of billions of pounds. I think something will have to replace it, and because the money is how the world goes round. And unfortunately, I don't know something else that's going to be able to come in and replace it at the moment. I think it is definitely a disease that is spreading, and when the economy is down, Husney, it's when they get more customers, because
Yeah.
people are more desperate to try and make money. So, I have worked in the betting industry when I was going through university, and so I got to watch and I got to see things happening. So shops being robbed at gunpoint. That's one of the things I got to see. Uh, uh, but one thing that was also interesting was the cameras, the security cameras. They were not pointing a lot of the time to the customers. They were pointing to the actual staff behind the checkout. And I always wondered why that was until one day I worked in a new shop and I saw that the manager of the shop was doing something I could not understand what it was. But he was basically, imagine there's a horse race and there are six horses. He was writing down every single one of those six horses. And then once the race started, you're not supposed to take any more bets. But what he would do, he was wait until he sees the horse winning, and then he would put that bet through, winning the
Hmm.
money. So this guy got arrested, and and he got his sentence. So good, he got caught. But it kind of shows you how this industry is just full of individuals who are, it just preys on people, and it's not healthy, uh, but it does
But
exist. And so
I can understand the part about, yeah, it's about the desperate, yeah. So if someone's, probably doesn't have another way, they might turn to betting. But don't you think, in the case of what's happening to the players, and of course maybe as a symptom of the wider problem, is that the money in football is somewhat fueling the greed. Like we mentioned, yeah, players, they shouldn't have to do this. Yeah, they don't only have their salary which they get from the club. They have the other sponsorship deals. They shouldn't have to go into those shady, especially like what we spoke about, that it's unlicensed and it's probably an underworld figure that's really holding the strings. And if it's breaking the legs, he's probably basically putting the players in his pocket, and pretty much they have to do what he says. So is it also a symptom of a wider problem? And yes, it happens in other leagues. Yeah, let's not pretend that uh, the Premier League and some other leagues around the world, like everyone's an absolute saint. Yeah, it happens in every league, I think. Just about the magnitude, but also about the magnitude for Serie A, that has for a while been lagging behind the glamour. It's lost its luster in quite a big way compared to the 90s, early 2000s, and it's just trying to catch up in its own way. But the greed is still there, because I'm sure these players, just like Onali, yeah, he, let's face it, he didn't go to Newcastle to try to win the Champions League. I know they're in the Champions League, but I'm sure at the back of his mind he probably knows that they're not going to win it. But the greed is really being fueled here. So, do you think that had Serie A, and this is a hypothetical, had Serie A not been in such a bad shape, this problem wouldn't have been as big? Because yes, they have this issue with in the Premier League, but I don't think it's so endemic, if I can say that.
So, Hasni, I think from your comment, I can understand that you're definitely not a gambler. I can tell
No, I'm not.
you're definitely not a gambler. So,
I only gambled my life. Come on.
yeah, yeah, this is not about, in my opinion, it's just my opinion. This is not about greed. This is about thrill. This is about
Okay.
that moment of endorphin that your brain gets when your horse, your player, your event that you've put your money on occurs. And it's that wanting to reproduce that feeling. Equally, it's that addiction to the fact that when you lose, you get a very negative feeling that you want to reverse. And what often people do, and where they fall into this, is they double their bet for the next one to try and make up for the loss. But it's actually a truly, Hasni, it's not greed, it's addiction. It's a truly an addiction. I am not kidding you. I've seen it too many times to say that this is something that is just down to greed. I've seen people who, and this is, we're talking about 15 years ago, right? Um, where there were different gambling rules in the UK and taxation and so on. But I've seen people go and collect their pension and blow it all in one day in a bookmaker's to try and get that thrill. And then from thereafter, for the rest of the week, they would bet, for example, 20 pence per event because they had no money left. Right? So that's greed. Where this is really problematic is the fact that there's no control. It feels like there's no control. It feels like the industry can get away with just saying, get an email to say, are you checking yourself? Is everything okay? To send an email like that, it seems to tick a box, and then people are just allowed to continue. So it's an endemic problem, and it's actually addiction, in my opinion. It's not greed per se, hasn't it? So if Serie A had more money, trust me, dude, I think the Premiership has just as much of a problem, in my opinion. It's just not yet been caught. Um, or those individuals and their clubs um, are much better at catching their players from doing it and stopping them from doing it. Their advisors, as you mentioned earlier, they're able to kind of say, "Oh, no, you must not do this." Um, where I think it might be more rudimentary is indeed in Serie A, where these kind of illegal gambling websites are. I had never heard of this, by the way, a place where you could get bets on credit. Obviously, I'd never heard of it because I've never done illegal gambling, but um, that would prosper in a place, I guess, where people are actively thinking, "I just want to do something and not be traced about it." I think that's the main reason. But it's the thrill. You're right. Tonali doesn't need the money, you know. Oh, and there's one other name that I want to bring up, by the way, in case people have seen this in the press. There was a guy called Nikola Zalewski of Roma, a football player. In the original release, he was the fourth player that was mentioned in the story. It's now been said by the Corona's source has come out and said, I made it all up about Nikola Zalewski. He wasn't involved. There's no information whatsoever about him having done any illegal betting. He just dropped his name in because Nikola Zalewski basically threatened to sue them because said, "There's no truth to this. I will sue you." And then this guy has come out and said, "Actually, I made it all up. Nikola Zalewski was not involved." So I just wanted to clarify that in case people have seen this in the media. That's it's out there in Italian press. I'm pretty sure that the translations of this will be coming out to English, but I thought it'd be important to mention this today to our English speaking audiences.
Yeah, man, it's still a developing story, and we definitely want to know how deep the rabbit hole goes, right? If that's the correct phrase.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the following on, and we spoke a little bit about it. I mean, there's the game uh, with England for the Euro qualifiers, and Italy still has some way to go in terms of seeing where if they actually qualify because they lost that game. So yeah, just speaking about that game, John, what do you
Yeah.
think happened, or was that the real Italy that showed up against England, or should have showed up against England? Because yeah, the scoreline suggests that yeah, England deservedly took the points away.
So two things. I will admit right now that it was the first full game that I have seen Jude Bellingham play. I've heard amazing things about him at Real Madrid and what he was doing there and just doing incredible things. And Carlo Ancelotti speaks so highly of him. But I've got to say, Jude Bellingham yesterday looked a different class to anyone else on that pitch on both sides. He ripped Italy to shreds. Um, the Italian defense, the legendary kind of style of defending that we have, is no longer there. Um, Acerbi was a starting centre back, by the way, 34, 35 years old or whatever. And then Bastoni came on and he got rinsed as well. We have a problem at the back. So that's the first thing. I know Spalletti's more attacking. And I know that in the midfield, Barella was not with Tonali. We didn't have Zaniolo. On the left side, we played El Sharawi as well. El Sharawi is a starter. It says a lot about the current quality of the Italian squad. I think, to be honest, the result is a reflection of where we are. And we are simply going to have to fight very, very hard against Macedonia and Ukraine to make it into the Euros as a second place team. There's no there's no way that you can look at the Italian squad and think that we're going to dominate teams. We could have done with Chiesa being on that pitch. We really could have. Scamacca scored a good goal, but again, hasn't he? England played Maguire as centre back. They left Tomori out. It's good for us for our game on against Juventus. But the first goal was Stones and Maguire left a massive hole in the middle of defence, and Skamaka just slammed it away, which is really nice for us to go 1-0 up. But once Bellingham put his foot on that ball, it was like he stood out. He's that. I didn't realize how special that guy is. I think now I'm starting to understand why everybody speaks so highly of him. Um, it's annoying. It's really annoying, because I think that squad and Southgate are not at his level. Um, he
Yeah,
looks like he play for France or something like that.
but I've said that about Bellingham because during the World Cup, he got his minutes really in the World Cup. I always since then thought he stood out. But yeah, I mean, England as a team, they are perfectly beatable, especially by Italy. They're not levels above the game. Um, one thing I didn't watch the game, but one thing that stood out to me, number one, that win against Malta, as good as any win is, isn't really representative of the strength of the team. Yeah, you're playing Malta, fine. There'll always be. I think in Europe there will always be that group where you have those whipping boys. Yeah, those
Mm.
teams that definitely you just pick up those 3 points. But against a better opponent, I wouldn't say miles better, but a better opponent than way better opponent than Malta, and by scoreline you could say better opponent than Italy. How then do you think the team then is built up? So you mentioned Acerbi, who, and I keep saying this about Inter, he's a has been. Yeah, he's 34 years old. He's definitely no Paolo Maldini at that age. And let's face it, he never has been. He never will be.
No.
Then they brought back Jack Bonaventura. I'm sympathetic towards Jack. I never wanted him to leave, but these are the sort of players that Spalletti is bringing back out of the wilderness. El Sharawi, who
Yeah.
you could say his best days are far behind him.
Yeah. And
He
I
still
should
gets in the
say,
squad.
Sharawi was one of the names associated with the scandal. Just so I should say after now, it's out there in the press. So he had a terrible game. I hope he wasn't one of them, but it's kind of weird. It's like afterwards you hear his name has been mentioned as well. So why did he play? Um, Very strange stuff going on, and he played a
Lack
terrible
lack
game.
of options. I think that's it. Because let's face it, a lot of the top teams in our league have become, especially Milan. Yeah, think about it. Our Italians don't get into the national team. We are dependent on foreign players. It's not the same Milan of the 90s or 2000s where, essentially our backbone. This is the Italian national team.
Hmm.
But we don't have that anymore.
Mm.
Calabria, look at
Yeah,
even Milan players, we can't campaign for Calabria to be at least a sub in the national team. No one has got that level of confidence. Florenzi has been a sub. It was perfectly understandable why he's not there.
yeah.
Pobega
I mean,
featured a few
so
times. So,
we had
I,
Di Lorenzo playing yesterday, hasn't he?
yeah,
And he got skinned alive by Bellingham and gave away a penalty. So there's just there are levels, hasn't he? Right? I
yeah.
think this Italy squad and Spalletti just get their feet on the ground and realize that to beat North Macedonia, they're gonna have to work really, really, really hard. Must not forget that that team has drawn against us and beaten us at home, right? They've beaten us at home in a qualifier, and they've drawn against us already. So it's going to have to be a fight. And against Ukraine, yes, last night Ukraine were 1-0 down against Malta at one point, but they still won 3-1. Okay? So we're going to have to fight really, really hard to win those games and to qualify for the Euros. And then Spalletti will have to do some incredible job to identify players who are capable of filling those positions. But my concern is that this generation does not have a strong defense. We cannot base our game on defense currently. And on our midfielders, we didn't have Verratti, we didn't have Jorginho. So the thing that was really telling in that game, and I know some of these guys are watching. I think we were texting yesterday, and we had no control in midfield, hasn't he? So the usual thing with England is you starve them off the ball, so they're just chasing it all the time, right? In the Euro final, it's what we went 1-0 down, but we starved them off the ball, and then they were chasing it. This squad couldn't keep the ball. Yeah, because the players were simply not on the pitch to be able to keep the ball, in my opinion. And you kind of think, I don't know if Verratti must be injured, I guess. Um, um, but if you don't have somebody who can be like a metronome in the midfield and control the ball, then you're gonna play to England's strengths. So you're right. I think England would be smashed to pieces by Spain, for example, because Spain would just pass them off the park and they wouldn't touch the ball really, um, and France would just outdo them. But against us, we literally all we had on that pitch. There was nothing we could have done. Um, I mean nothing. There was literally, we did well to go 1-0 up. First half was okay, but the moment they stepped on it, and it was over. I mean, Rashford scored such an easy goal. Harry Kane, dude, there's a ball over the top, and he just controlled it and ran past our defender like he wasn't even there, and then slotted it home. It was really, really poor. Um, so Spalletti's got a very hard job on him. I really, I don't, I rate our ability to make to 2 Euros about 50-50 right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was about to ask you that question, but I completely agree. I think even though it's still some years away, the focus has to be on getting a squad that can hopefully get back into the World Cup. It has to start from not even from now. It should have started from a while back already. But I don't think that squad is even ready. Yeah? They could be like very young kids who's having a tough team against a well-oiled England squad. I wouldn't even say they're well-oiled as well. I mean, they just you could say at this particular stage above average. Yeah? They have some real good players. I wouldn't deny that. Now they have some real good players who play at high level. But having that developing squad is more important than throwing the likes of Cherby, of Ashari. Who else did I see here? Cristante again. I mean,
Oh,
guys.
Cristante, guys. I mean, Cristante. Oh my God! Some dude on X said that Cristante is the same level as Bellingham. I just thought this is brilliant. This is absolutely brilliant. Was it Bonetti? I'm just trying to remember. Can anyone
Yeah, it was,
confirm it?
yeah.
Was it Bonetti? Oh,
Yeah.
Jesus,
It was
man!
like a match at
No,
Bellingham
no, no,
against
no, no.
Cristante.
It's embarrassing. Yeah, you're right. You're right. The thing is that Italy under 21 look okay, so it might well be at the next step there will be those individuals, but in the current squad, Alex Ferguson was really famous for this. Every time he won a trophy, he basically dismantled teams and started again, because his theory was that they got to where they wanted to get, and they needed the hunger again. And so he'd remove a big player.
Same like our squad last season, right? It was not the same that won Scudetto. You have to agree
Right.
with that.
Yeah. So you have your bellies full. So when Italy won the Euros, I felt like that was an massive achievement, like an incredible achievement to have done it. Um, what does this have to do with Milan? Because we don't have any players play for Italy. No, no. I just wanted to uh, coronavirus, corona snitch. Yeah. Um, but yeah, it was an incredible achievement to win the Euros, and we needed to restart again, But Mancini was just not willing to do that. He kept going back to the well and getting the same players again, and it just didn't work for us. So let's see what Spalletti does. Should we move on to the Juve game at the weekend, Husney?
Yeah, let's preview it because this will be our big game that's actually going to happen in a few days, and this will actually kickstart uh, quite a tough run for us. Yeah, we got Juve, we got PSG, and
You see Fabio's
uh,
comment. It's brilliant.
you
they've
can
got his,
put it up now.
they've got his tablet, haven't they? Got his tablet and his phone. He might be the spot of bother. Yeah. Right. So the match against Juve. Let's think now. Am I right in saying that Juventus are without Danilo? They are without Vlahovic
Vlahovic is questionable, but yeah, there's
and
still a chance
Chiesa.
maybe back. Chiesa is, I think, most likely to be back.
Is so? I thought those three players were out. So That
Chiesa, I don't think definitely yet. I think there's still a chance that he might be it. But as it stands, he's out. But I
I'm
think there's
telling
still a
you,
chance that
if
he might be
Chiesa
back.
plays, I'm 100% supportive of Gio's comment on it about him, because if he plays against us, then he should have 100% put himself on the line for Italy. He really should have. So I hope he was genuinely injured, and that he's actually not going to be playing against us. For our
But our
side,
players, yeah,
mm,
our players, we practically should have almost everyone with the exception of Benacer. I think even Ruben Loftus-Cheek should be back. I don't think he'll start. Same thing with Krunic. Some of the guys they didn't go to the national team. I'm surprised Adli didn't go to Algeria. I know they were playing game.
yeah,
Um, but the thing with our players, if I can comment, they've mostly been playing games. So tomorrow, for example, has got a bit of a rest. Mike is not going to be back, so we're going to have Sportiello. So I wouldn't say that we're starting off easy. We maybe it's fair to say that we also have our own fair share of problems. I mean, what do you think about our own squad?
I think that we should beat Juventus. I think in the upcoming games that we have, they are the easiest match that we have, because they're playing horrendous football. That's what I put it down to. It doesn't matter that we've got a couple of important players suspended for this. I really think that Sportiello can do a decent job. I know he's going to put Florenzi on the left, isn't he? And he's going to put Calabria on the right. That's just what he's going to do. But hopefully he'll have a choice, a true choice of having Kalulu back, maybe. Um, but I think we should beat them, Husney. I really do. I just don't rate Juventus at all. I don't. So yeah. I don't see any other result except for a win, and we really do need it. We can put them down, put them out the
How
way
about
because
our defensive record? Yeah, because this is one thing that I think we should be proud about. Yeah, but of course, coming back from the international break, things can change. Yes, I also agree that we should win. But what do you think the scoreline would be?
so we're at home, right?
Yes.
We're against Juventus. I think we've been doing quite well recently against them. I'm going to say 2-0. That would be
Okay.
my prediction for that game. And yeah, I reckon Giroud will score. He'll, an open goal. And
Okay.
maybe I'm going to say Captain America again because he's on fire. He scored a wonderful goal against Germany, by the way. In case anyone hasn't watched it, his first goal against Germany was beautiful. Um, Playing from the left, by the way, Husney. It's really interesting there. Um,
Okay. There's one player that you mentioned before we got started today, Chukwueze. So apparently he's going to be out. What alternative do you see? Because for me, you know what, this was one of the concerns I had with Pulisic before he joined. He had a bit of a spotty injury record, to say the least. So we definitely have to think backup. Who do you think can fill in that backup role? Could Luca Romero do it?
well, so he hasn't really been brought on or blooded properly or been integrated in the squad properly, hasn't he? So I would say it's going to start with Pulisic, of course, and then
Mm.
uh, maybe Romero might come on if we are well ahead, uh, as usual after the 70th minute. I don't see anything else. I mean, obviously in pre-season he looked good, didn't he? But during the season, Pioli just has not integrated him in at all. He's gone Chucky because he's like the $35 million man, and Pulisic, um, he's been doing so well. So I mean, Pulisic is a starter. The only thing I have a slight concern with is the US team played. Did they
Play them
play
on left
like?
wing, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, no, no. The US team played recently against. Is it Ghana? You got some
Yesterday, I think, yeah.
Fabio, or is it? Did they
Yeah.
play? Yeah. So I'm just kind of thinking about when they come back, when they'll be able to get back. It might be really tight in terms of they might be a bit tired after the travel. Um, so I think the Gazzetta and Radio Rossonera was kind of indicating that potentially the starting lineup will be a bit different with the US players, and actually he would have started with Chucky on the right because of the potential massive travel that the US team has to do.
Well,
But
Pulisic only played one half. That's the thing.
well, that's good news then. Then
Yeah.
potentially that means he'll be able to start the game. And let's be honest, hasn't he? It's not like purely rest players where he likes, does he? He uses them until they break down. And by the way, I think Krunic is coming back. Yeah.
I remember someone was saying in the chat that Courage is a player who has to fight for his spot, but somehow I honestly doubt that.
I
Courage
think
has
he
not had to
starts.
fight for anything since he's been in the squad.
No, I think he starts. I think he starts, and then depending how the match goes, Adley might
Adley,
come.
yeah,
That's how I
yeah,
see it.
that should be the natural rotation. But yeah, I mean, I'm feeling the confidence as well for the game.
Yeah,
One thing that I hope that we really do is that I really want us to continue these clean sheets. I think clean sheets are the path towards the Scudetto. If we can
yeah,
start to accumulate them, I'm not looking for a crazy scoreline like 3-4 nil. Uh, 1-0, keep it strong. Even last season, yeah, when we beat Juventus that first game, I think we only won it by 2-0, but our dominance of the game was so
mm,
obvious.
mm.
So that's
Yeah.
the one thing that I really want to see from the squad.
Yeah, I wish the only thing I wish is that Bartesaghi could be the left back, but he's just not played enough time, in my opinion. So I can see why he's going to go Florenzi on the left, and Florenzi will do a job. He will do a job just fine. Um, I don't see. I know in the preseason Juventus were smashing through the middle of our midfield, but this squad now has got confidence, and
Yeah,
Tomori is
chemistry. Yeah,
Tomori is on absolute fire at the moment. So and Chow together, I think should be okay. I'm gonna say this has to be a win. It's not. It should be. It has to be a win because um, Juventus have just not been playing good football, and so we have to take advantage of that right now because we know they'll usually beat up on the lower teams. That's how they get into the top four um, season in, season out. They scrape in. Um, but we need to do it because they haven't got any Champions League football. So let's just beat up on them now, increase the gap by 3 points, and then move on and think about PSG and Napoli, who by the way have no Osimhen. He picked up an injury, so
sure. But I don't want to take too far ahead. Just
no, no.
see how we do against Juventus, because my concern is that we have our own really bad injury record of ourselves. So I don't want to see like a convincing win and then Giroud goes down. Then we start to wonder like, okay, or Giroud or Liao, for example, goes down. My biggest worry is actually is Liao going down, because as amazing as our right wing has been since Pulisic has joined, I think the feed has still been coming a lot from the left. It's been those Liao runs through the left hand side, darting runs, cut back, then it's Pulisic or someone else just to kick it in. So he's still integral to the team. This is my concern.
Yeah, fair enough. I know Leao played for Portugal. I don't think he scored, but he's
He just
yeah,
needs to remain match fit.
he should be good. He should be good, and he's going to have to play a lot of minutes, guys. There's no way about it around it. He's going to have to play a lot of minutes. That guy. I just hope we can get ahead so that we can start to take players off and rest them.
Yeah. Or if we can do well, against PSG, I don't know how that's gonna work out. If we can actually do well in the Champions League, we can actually focus on the Scudetto run.
Yeah, or
That's also one of my other. Yeah.
equally, my preference is always the Scudetto. This year is the Scudetto because we've got 7 wins out of 8 games. We started really really well. So Scudetto is my preference, and also that second star before Inter, all that kind of stuff, all that jazz. So if we don't beat PSG, if we lose to PSG, my opinion, we should just get the hell away from the Europa League. Just leave it.
We can play the kids there, but as you know, purely he'll probably will try to win it, or he'll promise the higher management or Redbird that he'll try to win it. Never know with purely.
Never know. Nobody knows it. Nobody knows what Pioli's going to do. But one thing we do know is Krunic will start.
That's a certainty right there.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, I think it's been a great episode. We've covered quite a lot, and yeah, I'd like to thank yeah Fabio, Gio, Alex, Steve. You also been here, and is there anyone else that we hopefully didn't miss out? Nope. Yeah, for joining us and really covering this special topic that we have, and yeah, thanks, John, again for being an amazing co-host and sharing what you've read up and your own experiences about the world of betting and how it's impacted the sport, and especially how it'll hopefully not creep into our beloved club as well.
Yeah. No. Let's hope that, as you said, there is a story that we want to. It's going to carry on rumbling, isn't it, in the press? So let's go and see how it turns out. Or will come out as the investigation continues. And I should say, let's go beat Juventus, guys, and Forza Milan.
Points Milan always, guys, and yeah, I hope Juventus really slip it up and free 3 points in the bag. Let's keep up this Scudetto run going. All right. Once again, thanks everyone for tuning in, and yeah, we'll catch you till the next episode. See ya.
Italia!